Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has welcomed important steps made during peace talks with the US in Geneva, but warned the main problem remained Vladimir Putin's demand for legal recognition of Russian-occupied territories in eastern Ukraine. After US and Ukrainian officials convened in Switzerland on Sunday to discuss ending the war with Russia, officials from both sides reported progress and an intention to continue working. However, no details have emerged on how to bridge the considerable divide between Moscow and Kyiv over territorial issues and security guarantees for Ukraine. It is now thought that Zelensky and U.S. President Donald Trump will meet to discuss the more contentious points, although no timeline has been given. The question of territorial integrity in particular is a key point of divergence between Russia and Ukraine. Zelensky has repeatedly said Moscow should not be rewarded for its aggression with land it seized by force, and that doing so would create a dangerous precedent. Following the end of the talks in Geneva, Trump suggested on social media that something good just may be happening, but with the caveat, don't believe it until you see it. Russian representatives did not take part in the meeting in Switzerland, and the Kremlin said it hadn't received any information on the outcome of the discussions. Spokesman Dmitry Peskov noted Moscow was aware that adjustments were made to the plan that had initially been welcomed by Putin. That 28-point peace proposal was drafted by U.S. and Russian officials in October and presented to Ukraine last week. Several of its elements seemed heavily geared towards Moscow's long-standing demands, sparking consternation in Kyiv and its European allies. Comments by Trump, which suggested Ukraine had until Thursday to accept the deal or face serious cuts in U.S. support, contributed to creating a sense of urgency across Europe, and talks between Ukraine and U.S. officials were hastily convened. By Sunday evening, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said a tremendous amount of progress had been made at the talks. "I honestly believe we'll get there," he said. But some European leaders have been more cautious. "I am not sure if we are closer to peace," Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk said, while German Chancellor Friedrich Merz said discussions would be a lengthy, long-lasting process, and that he did not expect any breakthroughs this week. Europeans were left scrambling for a seat at the table last week after they were seemingly caught unawares when the U.S. draft peace plan was presented. A counter-proposal, reportedly drafted by Britain, France, and Germany, excluded any recognition of Russian-held regions, raised Ukraine's allowed army size, and left the door open to Ukraine joining NATO. Rubio said he was not aware of the plan, and on Monday, Kremlin foreign policy aide Yuri Ushakov rubbished it as completely unconstructive. Since launching its full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022, Russia has consistently demanded full Ukrainian withdrawal from the whole of the eastern Donbas region. But Kyiv and its European partners are weary of any settlement which would jeopardize the principles of territorial integrity and sovereignty, and Zelensky has repeatedly warned that giving up the Donbas would leave Ukraine vulnerable to Russian attacks in the future. Another key Russian demand is for Ukraine to never become part of NATO, but Kyiv sees membership of the alliance as the only way to protect itself from future attacks, and joining NATO is enshrined in the Ukrainian constitution. Despite last week's frenzied diplomacy, the next steps in the process are unclear. The expectation is that Zelensky will soon personally speak to Trump, after which a new draft peace plan will eventually be presented to Moscow. There were no plans for a meeting this week between Russian and U.S. negotiators, the Kremlin said. British Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer said there was still work to do for a just and lasting peace in Ukraine. A virtual Coalition of the Willing meeting will take place on Tuesday to discuss developments, he added.